All right. Good morning, everyone. We will wait as people join. And for now, just get settled. Feel free to put where you're from in the chat, where you're joining from, maybe what time it is, where you are. My name is Jess, and we'll get started in just 1 minute. Good morning. If you are joining us just now, we are just waiting a few more seconds for people to join. Feel free to put your name and where you're coming from in the chat, and we will start soon. Great. We've got people from New York, Michigan, Mexico, Florida, Pennsylvania, England. Nice. Texas, Ohio. This is great. We've got a lot of representation. Fantastic. Okay. So feel free to keep putting where you're from in the chat. I love to see where everyone is from and what time it is, because I appreciate if it's not 8:30 in the morning for you. That's awesome. But we will go ahead and get started. So my name is Jess, and today I am going to be talking to you about a project rubric specifically for Scratch Junior projects, and we call it the Creative Coding Rubric, because as I'm sure you are all aware, why we are here today celebrating Scratch and Scratch Junior is because we care a lot about creative coding. And this is a tool that I'm going to show you that you can use with students or kids that are using Scratch Junior to help them understand how they're using their creative coding skills within the context of their own projects. So, a little bit about me to start. My name is Jess. As I said, I am a Scratch Junior learning experience designer at the DevTech Research Group. The DevTech Research Group are the co-creators of Scratch Junior with the Scratch Foundation. And so we are so lucky to continue to work with such a wonderful group and keep Scratch Junior free and accessible to kids all around the world. The DevTech Research Group is hosted at Boston College. The lead professor is Marina Bears, who you might have seen in our opening remarks. So Marina is my mentor and wonderful boss. And so she has been guiding me in how we can make Scratch Junior even better for kids. In addition, I'm also a PhD student too. So if you have any questions about everything I'm studying, learning, working on, feel free. I will have my email at the end. But for now, let's get into it. So just a brief timeline so you can expect what we're doing. We're going to start right off with an activity on Scratch Junior. I will give you all time to go grab a device with Scratch Junior or download Scratch Junior. If that's not something that's possible for you right now, I will also be demonstrating the project on my screen. So if you're still waking up and not quite ready to do an interactive session, you can just watch along with me. That's totally fine. So we'll have both options, but I really encourage you to make a project for yourself. Then we will break and we will have learning time where I will explain the pedagogy behind this rubric, and then I will introduce the project rubric itself. We will then have a second activity where we revisit the projects that we made and try to use the rubric with them. And then we will wrap up. So I will try to keep an eye on the chat throughout, but probably most of the chat questions I will be able to take at the end. And like I said, I'm going to drop both my email and the Scratch Junior help email. So especially for questions like devices and web versions, because I know we are all very excited about the future of Scratch Junior. That is probably best kept out of this session and into the Scratch Junior help email, because we are ready for that. So, okay, and yes, I see in the chat there is a recording for this session and I think all the recordings will be released afterwards. But without further ado, let's get into our starter activity. So, as I said, I am going to have everyone work on Scratch Junior. So if you have a device, Scratch Junior is available on iPads, iPhones, Android tablets, Android phones, some Windows computers, and some Mac computers. So I'm going to be showing you guys from my Mac computer. You can download it from the App Store, the Google Play Store, and the Amazon App Store. And the icon that you'll look for is this little kitten right here. So when we're going to go ahead and get started. So if you have a Scratch Junior ready to go, feel free, but I will continue explaining what we're going to do. So Scratch Junior, very much like Scratch, but kind of special to Scratch Junior, is really centered around storytelling. And so we like to, when we're teaching Scratch Junior, we're saying that coding is another language. Kids are learning to express themselves, tell stories, remix their own stories, so add different endings, etc. So I encourage you for this task. This is completely your project, so you can do whatever you like, but I will be choosing a story to tell in my project that I'm going to be showing. So go ahead and choose a story. We talk a lot about, I see that we have people from all over the world in the chat. We talk a lot about how we want to localize and adapt all of our activities to make sure that they're culturally relevant. So I'm going to be doing a story that I know is pretty common in US classrooms called Where the Wild Things Are. But if you have other stories that you know that your kids hear a lot in the early grades, feel free to choose one of those stories or make up your own. So go ahead and open up Scratch Junior, and we are going to have 15 minutes to create a project. And like I said, if you're coming in now, please grab a device with Scratch Junior and make your own project for the next 15 minutes. If that's not something that's available to you, I will be sharing my screen and making a project as well. So we are going to convene back for learning time at 55 after the hour. So that's 8:55 EST for me. But okay. Does everyone, if there's any questions, feel free to toss them in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with the Scratch Junior project. So let me go ahead and just change my screen share. Share screen, window, entire screen. Thank you for your patience. All right. There we go. So I have Scratch Junior up on my screen right now, and I'm going to be talking out loud for the whole thing. So if you would rather work in quiet, you feel free to turn the volume down and you can just kind of watch along on the side while you make your own project. But for those of you that are watching, I love talking out loud. I find that that's a really good strategy when we're starting kids with Scratch Junior, is just explaining my thought process, saying why I'm choosing each block. So that is what I will be doing for you guys today. So for those of you that don't know, the story of Where the Wild Things Are in 1 second is there's a little boy named Max, and he is very mischievous in his house, and he gets sent to his room without any dinner. And he is so upset in his room. And then all of a sudden, magically, his room opens up into a world of where the wild things are. And he takes a boat across the sea to the wild things and meets all these kind of friendly monsters that he meets, and he plays with them and becomes their king. And they have a wild rumpus, which is their celebratory dance. And then he says, actually, I'm missing my home and my family. And he decides to sail all the way back to his room, and then he has his soup ready for him and he goes to bed. So that is the arc of the story that I'm going to be telling in Scratch Junior. So first things first, one thing I really like about Scratch Junior is, and with Scratch too, is that you can customize your characters. So we love having kids work on the paint editor. It's good to kind of separate that time, so giving them distinct times to do their artwork and then time for coding. But we want to make sure that they care about their project. So we want to give them opportunities to put themselves and their own artwork into the project. So I worked ahead a little bit, and I already have a Max character ready to go. So the reason Max is in kind of this like white suit is because he's dressed as like a wolf or a wild thing already in the thing. So that's how we'll know what our Max character is. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my Scratch Junior cat. So Max is my main character. And then I will start out my background in the bedroom because that's where it starts. So this is Max. So that's my first page. And I'm going to go ahead and get all of my pages set up. And then I'll go back to my programming. So second page, I want Max to be sailing across the sea. And I think it's at nighttime in the book. So I'm going to do the beach night scene. I'm going to get rid of my cat again. And then I'm going to add Max. And I'm going to add a boat. Okay, there we go. My next scene will be my wild rumpus, where he dances with all of the wild things. And I think I'll have that take place in the jungle. So we'll go ahead there. And then finally, oh, I got to add my Max. And then I'm also going to add my wild things. And so you'll see in my character gallery, I have a bunch of already like customized characters. A lot of these are made by kids that we have because they share their projects with us. So you'll get to see some student artwork featured. I'm going to choose this wild thing. And let's see, this wild thing. And one more. We'll do, and some of these weren't intended to be wild things, but wild things don't have an exact definition, so that's okay. I'll go ahead with one of our Scratch Junior characters, Tick, but with a different color. And here, I'll go ahead and just customize a little more to show you guys a little taste of the paint editor. So I think I'm going to use the square tool to make even a bigger hat for Tick. So I got to add my bucket, fill it in, and then this. Make it nice and thick. So I used a square tool, and now he has a nice top hat. Okay, cool. And then, we'll do something extra fun, and we will actually here. How about let's rotate the character? That's always fun. Oh no, my square didn't rotate with it. Okay, there we go. And then I'll move it. Go back hat. Okay. I'm gonna cut the black square and fill it in again. There we go. Okay. So as you'll notice, I was trying out some new things while I was on here, and that is something I really encourage you to do with students, showing them that it's not something that you know how to do automatically too, and that we're all figuring it out together. I'd really like to emphasize the design process of where we ask and imagine, and then we design, create, and then we test and improve. And talking about this test and improve aspect of it, that nothing ever starts out as perfect. So, okay, I've got my wild things. And then my final page, I'll just go back and put him back in his bedroom. So he's there. Take away the cat. Put Max back in. And we're set. Okay, so I have all of my settings ready. I have my characters ready. And now it's time to really program the story. So, like I said, in the first scene, he's being really mischievous and kind of making a mess. So I'm just going to have him, I'm going to use all of my motion blocks, and I'm going to have him kind of running around the room willy-nilly. So I'm just going to go ahead. And for those of you that are new to Scratch Junior, these are our programming blocks. This is our programming area. A difference between Scratch and Scratch Junior. Scratch Junior goes left to right. rather than top down. This is because when we're teaching children literacy, we want to draw on the parallels of written language and coding language. We are aware that there's also languages that are right to left, and that is a project that is in the works. So we can ask questions about that later. But for now, we have left to right. And so I am just gonna have him kind of running around lots of things. And I think I'll use a repeat loop, and I'll have him do that a lot of times. Okay, so I'm gonna test it out. One thing that I always encourage kids to do is test out their program as they go. See if they like it. Yeah, I'm into that. I think I'll change the parameters a little bit more so that he's kind of really moving all the way around the room. And then 4. Okay, let me test that out again. Okay, yeah, I like that. Cool. Okay, so this is his mischievousness. And then we are going to have him go to the next page where he goes into his boat to go to the wild things. And let me check on time. We've got 4 more minutes for those of you that are coding on your own. So I'm going to go to the end blocks, and I'm going to use this go to page block, which will take us to the next page. Now, this one, straightforward. I just want Max and the boat to sail across the screen. And so to do this, I'm going to have to give them the exact same program as each other because I want it to look like they're moving together. And so to decide how many steps or numbers for the parameter that I need, I'm going to turn on this grid tool. So I'm going to see, I see that the boat is currently at 4. It has to get all the way to 20. So I will put in 16. Now, I'm going to go to Max. I see Max is at 2. So I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to put in, let's see, I think I want Max to stay in the same orientation as the boat. So I'm still going to have it be 16, even though, why is it not popping up? Here we go. Hello? Okay. All right. So let's test that out. I'll turn my grid off. I'll move Max a bit. There we go. I'll move my boat back. And now let's see. So because I have them both starting with green flag, I can just tap green flag at the top. Oh yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to have them both disappear as if they're going to the land of where the wild things are. And then I will just have the Max character go to the next page. It's fine to have the boat 1, 2, because every time we add a new page, the characters reset. So the characters I added for each page are set already. So it won't affect it. The boat won't show up. Okay, so let me test that again. There we go. Okay, I'm very happy with that. All right, now this is the wild rumpus. This is basically a big dance party. And so what we do with kids is we try to bring the activities off the screen too. So dance parties and movement are a great way to get kids up and moving and thinking about their project and embodying the project without always being on the screen, because we want to make sure there's a balance. There's a really big importance about technological fluency and learning to program. And they're still really young kids, and we want to make sure they're active and playing together. So I like to have my kids plan out the wild rumpus by just moving their own bodies and then choosing their program. But for today, I'm just going to do something nice and quickly. We're going to have all of the characters do the same dance. So I'm going to choose a shake to the side, a jump. I think I'll have the shake to the side be there, but I'll take the jump out. And then maybe a full turn. So for those that don't know, the turn block needs a 12 to go all the way around. That's because we're teaching children the clock when we're doing it. And so we're saying 12 is all the way around. And I think that's all good. Let me test it. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. And so now I'll put our go to page block, but as I said, I want them to all do the same dance. So I'm going to do a trick on Scratch Junior called copying scripts, where I take the program from here and I just drag it over to another character. And now it will be in the other character's programming area as well. So they'll all get the same. So I'm going to do that for all of the characters. All right, and now let me test it out. Nice. Okay, and then he is back in his room, and I think I'm just gonna end it nice and quietly with just a say block. I'm gonna have him say, good night, good night. And so the say block is a fantastic way for kids to practice their literacy skills because they can type in what they want to say. But if kids are not ready for that yet, there's also this option to record your own voice in the green messages. And I highly recommend that. It's one of our kids' favorite things to do. So I highly recommend that block. But for today, since I'm assuming most of us can read, we can just have it say good night on the screen. Okay, so let me I see I'm 1 minute over already because I'm too excited. So let me test out my whole project and then we'll move on for now. So he's making a mess in his room. Sailing across the ocean. Doing the wild rumpus. And then he says goodnight. And so that very loosely follows the story of where the wild things are. There's always time to add in more details. And so often when we teach this in classes with kids, we encourage the teachers to have it stretch across a couple different classes so that kids can come back to their ideas, see what they had, and then see what they want to add to it. And so kind of giving them the time to process and step back from their project helps them get a little more creative in what they want to do. And you can introduce more skill blocks as it goes and have them add new details. So for example, the say block is not usually the first project or first programming block that we show them. So that could be something that they add in later. But okay, so that's our project. We're going to wrap up activity 1 for now. So let me go ahead and change my screen back to the slides. Let's see if this works. Does that work? Great. Okay. So one last thing, I encourage you, if you would like to share your project with others, this is completely optional. You can go ahead and take a picture or a video of it and put it on X, formerly Twitter. I have our 2 tags here at the bottom, the Scratch Junior tag and the DevTech Research tag. And then the hashtag Scratch Junior Project Rubric. I'm sure there are also hashtags for the actual Scratch conference, so please use those as well so you can all find each other's projects. Okay, so now I want to explain a little bit about how we go about assessing these projects, because as important as it is for kids to have their time to make the projects, express themselves freely, and show their creativity and unique ideas, we also in education want a standardized way to understand how they're using those skills. And so we come at it with a pedagogy first with the Scratch pedagogy of the 4 P's of creative coding: projects, passion, play, and peers. And so projects here is the most obvious connection. We're having kids make their own projects, but we want them to customize. So we want them to bring in their own passions. We want these projects to be open-ended and give them enough time to play with ideas. And then finally, we really want to emphasize sharing those projects with your peers. And so while we are virtual today, I encourage you to share with your colleagues or your students or something else. So that is our first overarching pedagogy for why we made this rubric. And then second, this one is specific to the DevTech Research Group. We operate under the idea of coding as a playground. And so coding as a playground means kids can take risks and explore new things and work with each other. And in general, just play and have fun. And so there are 6 behaviors that we look for in the coding playground to show that it is a positive technological development experience for the kids, so that they're developing positively in the context of technology. We want to make sure that there is communication going on. So oftentimes that means we will talk about the stories beforehand and kids will brainstorm together, and then they will share afterwards. They will share their projects with each other. Collaboration. There's a lot of different ways that kids can code together. Maybe one kid does the beginning and one kid does the middle, one kid does the end, or they work as a group the whole time. You can reach out to me for more ideas on that. Community building, that goes back to sharing our projects together. Creativity, we want to give kids ample time to explore for themselves and create what they would like. Same thing goes for content creation, making their own projects, etc. And then finally, choices of conduct. And this one is more thinking about how to respect yourself and others. And so this comes in much more with our classroom group behaviors. And so I'm seeing a question in the chat, if Coding as Playground is an American specific thing. It is a framework and pedagogy that was developed by my professor, Marina Bears. It is not specific to the US, although it was developed here, but we have done work around the world with this pedagogy and framework. And so I can absolutely send more papers and studies, etc., of how we've used this in different contexts. Okay. So finally, just to explain, if you're new to Scratch Junior, Scratch is ages 8 and up. It is an online community, so kids can share their projects with each other. And it has some more advanced concepts. So it has a really high ceiling. You can do a lot of things with Scratch. Scratch Junior was created more kind of as like a little safer playground for kids, right? So it's ages more 5 to 7. This is specifically when children are learning to read and write typically. And so that's why we have all of these parallels to storytelling and literacy. It is an app. And so you can get it on the app stores that I have listed on here. And what else about Scratch Junior? It is not an online community. This is a very intentional choice. All the projects stay local to Scratch Junior because we want children ages 5 to 7 are not always ready for that big understanding of what it means to be a digital citizen. And so we have in the works a lot of curriculum that might help kids transition from Scratch Junior to Scratch. But for now, we want to emphasize that Scratch Junior is very safe, not connected to the internet, and it just helps kids that are not quite ready for that big step to explore on their own in that context. Okay. So now a little bit more about the rubric itself. So I created this project rubric to essentially give teachers, educators, and researchers alike a way to understand how kids are exhibiting their coding skills in the context of their own projects. And so this is very different from task-based assessments, for example, because with task-based assessments, we'll ask them specific questions. Can you code this? What does this block do? Et cetera, et cetera. And that is very useful too. We find that we really like to do both assessments together to get a holistic view of how kids are learning to code. But this one is really special because it's showing how kids are choosing to use these skills and what they are most interested in. And oftentimes we'll find that sometimes kids go in one direction or the other and don't exhibit all the skills at the same time. But as a result, they really hone and strengthen one specific skill that they care a lot about. And we think that's really special to honor. And so we really like this idea of, we call it an artifact-based assessment, meaning that it's a child's artifact that we take to assess. So the rubric, I have a QR code here if you want to see the actual rubric, and then also a link that I can pop in the chat too. So here is the link for anyone that is interested in seeing it while I go through it. We look at 7 different categories. So one is program syntax, length, and amount. The next is block variety. The next is coordination. The next is repeat and number parameters. The next is visual customization. And then narrative and cohesion. And then finally, programmed customization. So I am going to explain what I mean by all of these, but what we did is we essentially thought about all of the powerful ideas of computer science that are developmentally appropriate for this age and how those can be exhibited in a project. And we boiled them down to these categories in how we can understand how children creatively code. You'll notice that both visual customization, narrative cohesion, and all 3, and programmed customization are all more kind of design-based and artistic features of the program and the project. That's because this is creative coding. And we want to emphasize that you really can't have one without the other. Kids strengthen their programming skills through thinking creatively and creating their own projects. And so these come together, and we hope that through this rubric, we convey that all of these are equally important to the experience of creative coding. Okay, so first off, we've got a lot of phrases that we use. So I'm going to quickly run through a few definitions that are used a lot in the rubric. It's very important if you're distributing this to teachers that the teachers have a consistent understanding of what the rubric is talking about, because that's going to change how the rubric gets graded. So program, we define as anything with a start block and then any middle block. So any middle block or an end block that makes a change. So things that are detached from a start block, we're not going to count as programs, but we will count them in other contexts. I'll show you later. Blocks that are just free floating or that don't make a change to the project when they're on their own, those aren't going to count. But all of these are examples of things that will count as a program. Then we talk about using a block correctly. And this one might seem obvious to some. I feel very strongly that we talk about what it means to be correct, because that's not always an obvious thing. Kids can do things in really creative and unique ways, and they can still be correct, just in different ways than we were thinking about. But so in this specific context, what we mean by correctly is that the block made a change to the program. So I think it's easier to show kind of the examples of the not correct block by block. So for example, here we have the return to start block, but there hasn't been any motion beforehand. So that's not a correct usage of this return to start block. And same here. And then, but here, these are all, I went to the start bumps. The start blocks will all make a difference, but if we have a start on bump block and that character never gets bumped, then that block isn't being used correctly. Same here, if there is an open message, but nobody is sending the appropriate color message, that's not going to be correct, because it's not going to make a change to the project. So I can tell you all more about these definitions, but I'm going to just go through them quickly so that we can talk about the actual rubric. For looks blocks, so this is the appear block, but we haven't had it disappear, so that doesn't make a change. This is the reset size block, but we haven't had it grow or shrink, so that also isn't going to make a change. So that's an example of incorrect usage. Sound blocks, I would argue, not really a way to use them incorrectly. I think the sounds will always make a change to the program or project, but feel free to think of other ways. And then end block, there is no way to use them incorrectly, essentially. The red end block, that's just plain, doesn't really make a change regardless. But when we're teaching children that order matters and what a sequence is made up of, we still like to use that red end block. So for my definition of program, some teachers might choose to only define a program with the start and end block together. That's a personal choice. Okay. And then finally, for these orange control blocks, ways that you might use them incorrectly is if you have a wait block at the very end of the program, nothing's going to happen after. So there's waiting, but nothing's happening. If we have a repeat loop and a repeat forever loop, then this repeat loop is not doing anything because it's going to repeat forever. So those are just some examples of how to use those blocks correctly in this context. Okay, another definition I have is theme. So I mentioned that one category is narrative and cohesion. This is a really difficult category, and we'll talk about it more when I get to that section. But essentially what we're looking for is a continuity throughout the project to show that the kid is following a line of thought throughout the project, because that is a developmental milestone for kids when they move from random creation to more connected and cohesive creation. And so we're looking for that, and I'll explain more what we think. I saw a question about copy of the slides. Absolutely yes. Almost everything I'm saying and more is in a recorded video that you can get. I will give the link. We have a training and certification that will give you access to all of the downloads, these slides, the rubric, examples, translations as we get them, etc. So I will give you that link. You will definitely get these slides, I promise. So ways to look at theme are if there are elements of the project that carry throughout. So for this one, you'll see I did Where the Wild Things Are, and you'll see that there's that same Max character throughout this. And just so you all know, this is a kid's project, and they did a much better job than I did on customizing their boat. They made their own boat. They wrote the name of Max on the boat. They customized their bedroom and added a bed character. So anyways, kudos to the kids. They are the experts here. And I think that's our last definition. Okay, great. So now we are in the actual rubric. And so I am looking at the time. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I provided the link to everyone so you can read it on your own as well. And we try to make it very specific so that you can use it on your own without needing a ton of guidance. That being said, we have a training and certification that we encourage you all to take that will really help solidify these ideas. But essentially, so program, syntax, length, and amount, we are looking at how many programs the kids have created and how many blocks they are using in those programs. And so there's a couple different ways that the kids can be doing this. So there are programs with multiple blocks that we want to reward. And then there's also this scenario where kids are just making a ton of short programs, and we want to reward that too. So I see a question in the chat. How long do they work on a project to use the rubric? That is absolutely up to you for the kids. With the projects that we're looking at, they range from one class period, which is about 20 minutes on screen, to 4 class periods, which is about 4 sessions of 20 minutes on screen. So it's really up to you. And you will notice that the longer the kids have to work on the project, the more robust they're going to be and the more likely they will be to fall in this like 3 or 4 category. One note here is that if kids are in the 3 or 4 category, that is the top level of mastery. So we absolutely do not expect kids programs to be getting all 4s. That it's absolutely okay. They are doing very well if they are all over the board, because this is really to show us their progress. It is not like the American grading system of A, B, C, and every kid needs to get an A to be fine. This is a process-based tool, so we want to use it at multiple times and just see how kids are growing and changing. So if they are getting all 4s, they're probably ready for Scratch. I'm gonna be honest, but Scratch Junior's got a lot to explore too. Okay. For variety of blocks, this is looking at the amount of like types of commands they're using. And so we group this by the color categories. So are they using the motion blocks, the sound blocks, the control blocks, et cetera, et cetera. And so we really just count by the categories and we make sure that they're, branching out. This is an example, I think, of something that might change based on a task-based assessment versus an artifact-based assessment. When it's task-based, I think we can probe a little more and show that kids know all the blocks. Whereas with artifact, kids might be really excited about a certain type of block. And so it could be a really helpful tool for us to understand how kids are choosing to use the blocks and how we can show them more blocks and how they are exciting so that they can use them on their own. All right, coordination. This is the idea of thinking about how programs may interact with each other, go at the same time, trigger one another. And so we have a bunch of different examples. This is essentially the control blocks of speed and wait, also the start on bump, and the send message blocks. The next category we have is repeat and number parameters. This is looking kind of at the efficiency that kids use when they're programming. Are they putting 5 blocks that say move right, or are they doing 1 block that has a parameter of 5? Similarly, are they having a block that says right and then move up and then all repeated that 5 times, or are they putting it in a repeat loop? And so these are just different ways they can progress with their efficiency. One thing I want to say, it is absolutely not expected that children ages 5 to 7 are making the most efficient programs. It is A-okay if they are learning in their own pace and not using parameters and repeat loops yet. This is a progression of skills, and we call it out because it is a powerful idea of computer science. And we know that where children are at developmentally, it's a process, and sometimes the best learning happens inefficiently, and that's okay. Okay. Next one is visual customization. This is all about the paint editor, whether that is used with the background or the characters. It's how much they choose to customize it, and then also the types of tools that they use in the customization process. One thing that I really like to remind teachers of is that the paint editor itself is a digital tool, and we're teaching children how to create using technology. There are a lot of advanced tools in the paint editor that kids can use. It's kind of like a mini Photoshop. So I really like to emphasize that there are skills and a skill progression that happens with visual customization. Last two, narrative and cohesion. I already spoke about this with defining theme, but essentially we're looking at this progression of kind of a random project where the pages aren't connected or the events aren't connected, all the way through to a project that has a clear narrative and continuity throughout. And there is a wide range in between. And this one, I encourage you to make more specific to your class setting. So if they're working on a specific story or a specific type of project, you can tailor these items to be specific to that content knowledge that's being taught in that class. And then finally, we have programmed customization. And programmed customization is another way that they are creatively coding and doing like artistic expression, but they're using programming blocks to do it. And so this typically refers to the purple looks blocks. That means changing the appearance of their characters with blocks, or the green blocks, they might be recording their voice or recording music, or having the narrative go through with their record blocks. So any use of those will get them into the programmed customization category. One thing to note here with programmed customization, we don't need these blocks to be in official programs, because we find that a lot of kids see these as more like initialization steps where they drag down their purple blocks, change the appearance of the character by tapping it, and then go into their official program. And we want to count that. So though that is a brief overview, like I said, there is a training, a certification, a downloadable rubric, translations, and publications on this. So I just finished, it is in press right now, our validation paper on this rubric. We validated it with over 2,000 projects, and it had very high reliability and validity. So we are very happy about that. We're working on a new paper right now that is looking at the differences between the rubric and a more task-based assessment and seeing how using both assessments can provide a more holistic view. So all of that will be put up there. This is a different link. This is to the training page. I can also put that in the chat. All right. So I put that link in the chat. That will walk you through. It'll be a very similar video to this, me just talking at you, showing you these slides, but you can get the slides, rubric, etc. And we have a quick quiz to help you kind of test your skills. All right. So now let's get to activity 2. Okay. So as for those that may have come in late, we started out with creating a Scratch Junior project. And that if you didn't have that accessible, I made a project too. So what we're going to do for the next, let's see, about 10 minutes, and then we can wrap up. For the next 10 minutes, we're going to revisit those projects that we made, and I will revisit the project that I made too. And I will look at it in the context of the rubric and see how it works out. I want to remind everyone that the rubric really is a full range of skills, and we expect projects to be everywhere on the rubric. So it is not a bad thing at all if kids are getting 0s or 1s in some categories. That just means they didn't choose to use those skills. So we really like to see the progression, and we like to use this iteratively with multiple projects to see how kids are growing and changing. Okay, so let me change my screen share yet again. And I will try to pull up both my project and the rubric at the same time if I can. So I've got my project, make that a little smaller. And I've got the rubric. Okay. It might be a little hard to see, but you all have the link to the rubric and your own project. So we're going to come back at 30 after the hour if you want to do this on your own. But if you want to watch along, that's fine. We'll spend the next 8 minutes going through my project, and then we'll come back together to wrap up before the end of the session. Okay? All right. Let me share again. Okay, so forgive the behind the scenes-ness of this, but you're going to see both of my tabs at the same time. So here I have the first 2 categories of the rubric pulled up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the entire project to count how many programs are used. So on the first page, I've got 1 program. Second page, I have 2 programs. Third page, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 programs, and I have 1 program on the last page. So that puts me into the 6 or more programs in the project. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a 4 for this one. Keep in mind, I've been doing Scratch Junior for a long time, but so it's absolutely okay if kids aren't getting 4s. But so we'll get a 4 for this one because we've got 6 programs. I also believe we have 4 or more with multiple blocks because you can go and see that I used these long programs. Now I will jump to block variety or variety of blocks. And so I'm going to see our 2 rating is 3 color categories used correctly. A 3 rating is 4 or more, and then a 4 is all colors. So I know that I didn't use all the colors because I didn't add any sound, but I think I used an end, I used a control, I used the motion, and then I used the good night at the end. So I will give myself, and then let's see here. I don't qualify for this, but let me look at my or here. Within 3 or more color categories, at least 2 distinct blocks were used. I don't think I got that, but let's see. I definitely used more in the blue blocks. but I didn't use any orange. Well, I used one orange, but I didn't use any others. Here I used purple and purple, but that's only 3. Oh, and I used the go to page and the regular end. So I actually will go ahead and get a 4 for this because within 3 or more color categories, at least 2 distinct blocks were used. I used more than 2 types of blue blocks. I used more than 2 types of looks blocks, and I used exactly 2 types of red end blocks. Okay. So now on to coordination. So coordination looks at how well the programs are communicating with each other, essentially. So one thing I'm going to notice with this 2-point category is when we use the go to page block with a green flag on the next page, that counts as a 2 points for coordination, which is exactly what I did because it's essentially saying go to the next page and start right away. So this block is essentially coordinating with the green flag on the next page. I forgot that Max repeats a lot, but we'll wait it out. So that's an example of coordination. Let's go ahead and check if I get a 3-point. So at least one character has 2 or more programs. I did not do that. I did not use start on bump. And so that'll settle it. So I get 2 points for coordination. Now to repeat and number parameters, I used a repeat loop with 1 block inside. I also used a repeat loop with more than 1, going back to here. So I have more than 1 block here. And then let's see if I get 4 points. Nested loops. So I don't have any examples of repeat loops within repeat loops or a repeat loop and then a repeat forever. So I am only going to get 3 points for efficiency. Visual customization. I definitely did 4 or more characters or backgrounds with the paint customization tool. So I believe I'll go ahead and get a 3 there. And here I did not use too many. Oh, when I created Hi, everyone. I'm back. I don't know. Can anyone? Sorry about that. I got jumped off. Can anyone hear me? Okay, I'm back. Great. Sorry about that. I was on the wrong screen and I somehow got kicked off, but I'm back. Hopefully the editors will be able to manage the recording, putting them back together. Sorry about that. Okay, let me go back and share my screen. Okay. So for visual customization, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a 3-point because I did the 4 more characters, but I did not use too many advanced tools in the paint editor. And then finally, for my last 2 categories, narrative and cohesion. Like I said, this is a really subjective one because you have to know what the kids are thinking about. Ideally, you can ask the kids and have them explain their projects to you, but there is some skill to be said with kids showing their ideas through the project on their own. And so for this, I used the same character throughout and I followed the storyline. And so I'm going to go ahead and give myself, I'll give myself a 3. I'll give myself a 3 because I think it's not quite clear what's happening here if you don't know the story. So I could have added some music or some dialogue or something to say the wild rumpus is happening. So I'll go ahead and give myself a 3 for that. And then finally, programmed customization. Like I said, I did not use any of the green sound blocks, but I did use 2 of the purple blocks. So on this first page, on the second page, I used the disappear block. And on the last page, I used the say block. And this I put in a custom message. So I believe that will get me a 3 here, where I did a non-default text entry that has a clear relation to the project. Good night. Okay, so now back to my slides. Time for wrap up. Okay, so maybe feel free to put in the chat, how did that go for you? How did everyone feel like they did? You can go back to the first page of that rubric and see kind of what category you're in. We have budding, developing, emergent. I'll think of them all, but we have different categories that you can kind of characterize kids in their different stage progressions of how they're working through their skills. I encourage you all to take the training and test it out and make adaptations as you see fit. So what we care most about is that this is a helpful tool for educators and researchers. Our papers validate the exact rubric that you saw. So there's no changes from there. But when you're taking it into your own setting, that's your time to make it work for your own students, whether that be their developmental needs, their cognitive needs, their language needs, or their cultural needs. All of these can be adapted to your setting. So now we've got about 4 minutes left. I'm gonna go ahead and put this slide up with my email and different resources and links. But now I will kind of divert my attention to the chat and see if there's any questions for the last couple minutes. Does that sound good? I can't hear you guys, but I'm assuming you're all saying yes. Okay. You don't leave that free. Do I tell students what to use, or do I leave that free? In the second lesson, you always put the story with 3 levels, 5 characters, and 4 sounds. I love that. So we keep it free in terms of the type of story, the type of project, etc., and even the specific blocks. Up to them, what works for them. And I think it's really helpful to add scaffolding, like just what you said, of that we're having 3 different pages. Because if kids aren't prompted to do that, then they might not. They might just stay on 1 page. If they have 5 characters, that's helpful for them to get to start thinking. It's really personal preference. The way we do it mostly is that with the first project, we haven't taught them the skills of new pages yet, and so we don't expect that. And then with the third project in our curriculum, we have taught them extensively about new pages and go to page. And so then it's very clear to them that that's a skill that they're going to build into it. So it really depends on your classroom, but I think there is nothing wrong with some scaffolding and some prompting. I just want to encourage you to also make sure that kids get to put their own voice into it too. Great. Okay, let me see if there's any more. It's asking for a password. Okay, sorry about that. So I sent you guys to the training and certification page, but if you go to the validated instruments, let me pull that up quickly. Validated instruments. You are going to have to request an instrument first and request the project rubric. And then my lovely lab manager will send you the password for accessing the training and certification. This is just for our records so that we know which researchers and teachers are using the rubric. So we find it really helpful. I'm sorry, it's a couple different steps, but we really appreciate if you could fill out the request. Sorry about that, I forgot. Okay. Do students storyboard pre-project? Yes, that's one of my favorite things to do. So in our curriculum, the Coding as Another Language curriculum that's listed here, we have these tools called design journals where kids do either pre-write or pre-storyboard depending on their literacy levels. So if they're at a point where they can practice their writing, sometimes we have them write their story first. If not, we have them draw and storyboard what they're going to do. It's also helpful to kind of have that planning phase distinct from the iPad, because once they get on to Scratch Junior, that's when the creation and tinkering begins. you can sometimes lose sight of your plan. So yes, I absolutely encourage pre-project storyboarding. That can either happen as a whole group, or it can happen individually, or kind of a hybrid. Okay. All right. If there's any more questions, you can absolutely email any of the emails up here or all three. I will respond to any of the all three. And that concludes that. So thank you all for coming. I hope that this was a helpful tool and exciting. I hope you all enjoyed my Where the Wild Things project is. Boy. And have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, everyone.